Picture two Boeing jumbo jets parked on the same ramp. Both wear presidential colors, both cleared to carry the President of the United States. One is more than 35 years old. The company that built it stopped making the spare parts decades ago, and just about the only airline still flying its kind with passengers is Iran's. Every hour it flies costs the better part of $200,000, more than a stealth bomber. And every one of those hours is one the fleet can never get back. The other is brand new, a fraction as much to fly, and the most luxurious aircraft a president has ever set foot on. Common sense says you send the tired old jet to the safe, easy trips, and the new one out to do the hard, dangerous work. Here it is, the exact reverse. The old, dying aircraft is the one cleared to fly into hostile skies. The brand new one is advised, by the very people who operate it, to stay close to home. This is Classified Decoded, where a machine's story starts where the headline ends. Subscribe if that's your kind of story. Today, we're decoding why the newest Air Force One is kept from the hardest trips its name should cover, why it flies almost undefended, and why the Air Force fielded it anyway. Start with the old jet, because it is the one in trouble. The two aircraft that have carried presidents since 1990 are built on the Boeing 747-200, a jumbo so old its production line closed back in the 1980s. Keeping them airworthy is no longer a problem money can solve. The suppliers who made their parts are gone. A single broken component can mean waking a tooling line that slept for 30 years. Each heavy overhaul now runs more than a year. These jets are being nursed, not flown. The replacement was supposed to be here already. A pair of purpose-built 747-8s, the real VC-25B, was contracted back in 2018, and it has slipped, and slipped again. Boeing signed a fixed-price deal and swallowed billions in losses on it. The first aircraft is not expected before the middle of 2028. That leaves a gap between the year the new jets were promised and the year they arrive. And inside it, the fleet is two aging airframes with no margin. Into that gap fell a lifeboat, a 747-8 built as a flying palace for the Qatari royal family, handed to the United States and flown to a hangar in Waco, Texas, to become a temporary Air Force One. The politics of that gift are their own story, not one an engineer is equipped to tell. What an engineer can tell you is what happened next on the shop floor. Because turning a luxury airliner into Air Force One is not a shopping problem. It is a calendar problem. Every layer of protection on the real thing, from the missile decoys to the shielding that survives a nuclear flash, is built into the airframe, not bolted onto it, and that is measured in years. The Waco team was given 10 months to have the jet flying by the nation's 250th birthday. So this aircraft has one enemy, and it comes in three forms. A fleet past 35, a replacement years late, a 10-month conversion. Everything that follows is the Air Force running out of time on all three at once, and choosing which of those losses it could live with. Consider what got left off, and why. A real Air Force One carries a survivability suite that never makes the brochure. A missile approach warning system, reading the ultraviolet flash of a launch. Dirk-M turrets, directional infrared countermeasures that answer it by jamming the incoming seeker with a modulated laser until it breaks lock. Chaff to bloom a false radar return, flares to outburn the engines and drag a heat seeker off. That threat is a man-pads, a shoulder-launched missile waiting by a runway for the seconds after takeoff. And deeper, in the walls, hardening against the electromagnetic pulse of a nuclear burst. Shielded cable, a Faraday cage worked into the structure, analog backups for when the digital side is stunned. The bridge, as they named it, has almost none of it. So why is it missing? Surely, for the wealthiest military on Earth, the money was there. It was. Close to $1 billion flowed into this jet, some of it pulled, controversially, from a nuclear missile budget. And all of it bought communications, not armor. What stops you is not the price of a turret, it is the clock behind it. You can fit a secure, encrypted phone to an airplane in an afternoon. You cannot wrap that airplane in a Faraday cage in an afternoon. One is wiring, the other is surgery. Open the fuselage, pull dozens of miles of cable, re-shield it, prove the whole airframe against a simulated pulse, each step finishing before the next begins. 3 shifts a day, 400 people around the clock, and it still will not compress, because the calendar does not take bribes. So the team triaged. They kept the one thing that turns a 747 into Air Force One, the hardened, encrypted SATCOM and command links that let a president command forces from the sky. They ran the counterintelligence sweep of foreign-built airframe demands, stripping the original avionics and hunting every wire run for a transmitter that should not be there. Then they let the armor go. A former Air Force secretary put a number on the whole. 3 to 4 years of tearing the jet back open to match the VC-25A's protection. Nothing here was cut by mistake. It was cut by the clock. The armor did not fail a test. It failed to fit inside. 10 months. An aircraft without that suite is not a little less safe. It is blind and unarmed at once, unable to see a missile coming or to answer if it did. For an airframe like that, there is one way to survive a guided missile. Never be where one is. Take the armor off, and the armor that remains is the map. The threat itself is that same man-pads, hunting the low, slow moments of takeoff and landing. But the constraint is the destination, not the altitude. Every flight has to land and lift off at a specific airport, and if that airport sits inside a threat, a jet that can neither see a missile nor answer one cannot be risked there. So the people responsible for it drew a line: home airspace and low-threat destinations abroad. The dangerous trips stay with the old jet that still wears the full suite. A second absence gets filed under the same heading and belongs in a different folder. The bridge cannot refuel in the air, and neither can the real VC-25B, but that is a deliberate choice, not a casualty of the schedule. Refueling is rarely done with a president aboard, and the 747-8 carries so much fuel it hardly needs to. Close to 8,000 nautical miles on one load, most of the planet in a straight line. Loitering aloft for days through a nuclear crisis was never this jet's job. That belongs to the E-4B Nightwatch, the doomsday plane, which keeps its probe because staying up is its whole reason to exist. The bridge only needs to get somewhere safe and land. The doctrine was tested at a NATO summit in Ankara in the summer of 2026, with tensions running high. The aircraft flew in. When the threat picture sharpened, the security apparatus did what the line on the map promised. It pulled the jet out of the danger and let a fully defended aircraft take the sensitive leg home. The restriction was not a theory on a slide. It was enforced the first time the aircraft touched a hostile sky. A castle with no walls is perfectly safe, right until the war crosses the river. Its defense was never stone. It was distance. The range map says this jet can reach almost any country on Earth. The threat map says it may reach almost none of the dangerous ones. Air Force One is supposed to close that gap. This one lives inside it. So, grounded from the hard trips, blind to a missile, nearly $1 billion spent. Why keep it at all, instead of parking it and nursing the old jets longer? Because of what the old jets are. Hold the cruel arithmetic from the opening. The jet that is dying is also the only one with armor, and those two facts, sharing one airframe, trap the Air Force. The trips that truly need protection, the international and high-risk ones, can only be flown by the VC-25A, so every hour of its remaining life has to be hoarded for exactly those flights. Fly it to a rally in a safe state, and you have not used a good airplane. You have burned an hour you cannot buy back on an errand a cheap airplane could run. And most presidential flying is that errand. 70 to 80% of it domestic and low risk, the meetings, the fundraisers, the weekend trips. That is the block of hours burning down the old fleet's last airframe life. Hand it to the bridge, and the 2 VC-25As can rest, saved for the flights only they can make. The economics only sweeten it. The bridge is estimated at $20,000 to $30,000 an hour against the old jet's $178, a saving of a different kind that still runs to tens of millions a year. Then the deeper reason, the one that outlives the crisis. The Air Force had never operated a 747-8, and Boeing shut the entire 747 line in 2022 for good. So the moment a president flies the bridge, it becomes what no training jet can be. The one 747-8 running real presidential missions, shaking out the crews, the procedures, and the supply chain for a type nobody makes anymore. Around it, the service quietly bought two used 747-8s from Lufthansa for $400 million. One to fly as a trainer, the other stripped for an organic parts pool, a private hoard of spares against a dead supply line. When the real VC-25B lands, the crews who fly and fix it will not start from zero. They will have years of practice banked. And by the terms it arrived under, the bridge leaves service before the decade turns, its classified gear pulled out to become spares for the jets that replace it. On paper, the bridge is the weakest Air Force One ever flown. On the schedule, it is the only thing keeping the strongest ones alive long enough to be replaced. Here is the objection, and it deserves a straight answer. Everything so far explains the crisis. None of it explains the choice. Plenty of countries facing an aging fleet do not solve it by accepting a foreign gift, pulling money out of a nuclear program to pay for the work, and putting their head of state on an aircraft their own security service will not fly into a war zone. Explain the pressure all you like. Doesn't this still look less like engineering and more like a very expensive vanity wearing an engineer's coat? It is a fair charge, and it splits cleanly in two. The first half is the politics, how it was acquired and how it was paid for. That is a real question, and a genuinely open one, but not one an engineer can settle, so this video will not pretend to. But the airlift crisis is not on trial. It is a fact with a tail number. The old jets really are dying. The replacement really is years late, and the gap is measured in presidents who still have to fly somewhere. Given that, look again at what the bridge actually is, because we have been judging it by the wrong standard the whole time. We measured it against the Fortress, the Air Force One built to carry a president through a war zone, a role it was never meant to fill. That stays with the VC-25A and the Doomsday plane. The bridge was built to be something with no glamour at all, a shock absorber, dropped into a fleet transition to keep it from breaking apart. Which changes what the missing armor means. At the start, it looked like failure, protection that should have been there and wasn't. That reading is wrong. The armor was not lost. It was spent, on the calendar, not on the president. The president is not 1 degree less protected, because every dangerous mile is still flown behind the full suite. What the Air Force surrendered was the option of sending this jet into danger, and then it only ever sends it where there is none. The cost of that trade rounds to zero. The time it buys is enormous. Now the two aircraft on the ramp make sense. The reversal we opened with, the dying jet going to war and the new one staying home, was never backwards. It was the design. The new one kept close so the old one can be spent where only it will do. 2 airplanes, 2 jobs, 1 equation for survival. That equation was not free. It was paid in a diverted missile budget, in a constitutional fight over a foreign gift, and in a brand new jet its own operators must keep away from every dangerous sky. Those are real costs. But every one is a cost of time, not a cost of incompetence. Reading a machine by the cost it hides, not the badge on its tail, that is the whole job on Classified Decoded. Subscribe, because the receipt is always written in something you cannot see, and there is always another one to read. So look at the bridge one more time. The gift from a foreign palace. The missing missile jammers. The line its own operators drew around it on the map. When a reporter sees a machine this compromised, the question is always, how did they let it get this bad? An engineer asks a different one. What was the crisis so severe that this was the rescue? The armor is not gone. It was spent, deliberately, on the safest miles a president flies, to keep 2 dying airplanes alive long enough to be replaced. That is not a scandal dressed up as engineering. It may be the most honest object in the whole story, a system admitting out loud that it had run out of time, and buying the only thing time will still sell. So next time you're shown a machine that looks like a failure, ask the harder question first. Don't ask whether it is good. Ask what it had to give up and what got bought with the difference.